Oh, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Buckle up, everybody. This is just rugby news. It's rugby theater. Welcome to the Rugby Scoop. Once again, international footy. International rugby up again. Jade, Craig, how are things? How are things in Bloemfontein? How are you doing? How was the weekend?
All good, all good. Lots of rugby to chat about, bro. Lots of rugby to chat about and lots of threads and tweets from Rugby Scoop to read about and to discuss as well.
Apparently lots of threads, apparently lots of tweets to discuss today. Tables, ladders, and chairs, guys. Griffin, how are things on your side? Unfortunately, your team couldn't get over the line last week. But yeah, we keep chipping away. But how was the weekend?
Weekend was okay, mate. We're having all the weather. The weatherman this week is not coming to you from Bloemfontein. It's coming from the UK. We had thunder and lightning earlier this morning, but it's bright sunshine now, ready for the Rugby Scoop.
Sunshine and Chevrolet, bright place and sunshine in the UK. Vickers, Johannesburg, 9.3 FM. What is it called? Doesn't matter. How are you doing? How are things in Joburg?
Yeah, things seems to be cruising nicely in Joburg. Everything is good, bro. Nothing much.
Things are cruising nicely like the Allblacks. Guys, as usual, we start off with news, making headlines. We're not going to skip anything. Straight to the point. Griffin, Owen Farrell called up to the Lions. Your thoughts?
It's interesting, and I think everybody is kind of focusing on Owen Farrell, and I think it's the wrong thing to do. I think the right thing to do is to focus on what it says about the rest of the selections. I think this is an admission from Andy Farrell and the coaches that they'd gotten some of the selections wrong. They'd gotten the 10 selections wrong. Marcus Smith looks absolutely nowhere near the conversation for the test match at fly half. They clearly had a leadership and experience issue. That's what they had Elliot Daly in the team for, was to bring that. And once he went, they really felt a deficit in that area. So I think rather than focusing on, does Owen Farrell start? Is he good enough to play a test match for the Lions in 2025? I think it's, what does Owen Farrell bring? If we agree he brings those things, then what does that say the rest of the squad is missing? Because, I don't know, the Lions, they're struggling to win the minds of the people at the moment.
Wolf, I think it brings in experience, brings in leadership within the group. I'm not concerned about his on-field ability, whether he's missed out on over 10, 15 test matches or whatever. But I think in the leadership side of things, I think that's what he's been brought in for. Maybe a couple of young heads in the leadership group as it is. And as you've mentioned, Elliot Daly was selected for a certain and specific reason as well. And I think Owen Farrell coming in brings in that stability and that leadership, especially when it comes to Lions and the traditional element of what the Lions tour is all about. You really need strong leadership in that sense. I mean, if I take it back to the likes of what's his name? The Johnsons and the Delalios and the Keith Woods of this world, right? I mean, they toured 97, toured 2001, toured 2005. Some of them, others were not around. But you look at a guy like O'Driscoll. I think he had, 4 tours with the Lions? I mean, on his 4th tour, he wasn't as relevant, quote unquote, but just the leadership element that he brings in off the field. A lot of people probably look at this and be like, how useful or how good is he on field? But we forget what happens during the week, right? We forget how important leadership is. Maybe Vuyo can also jump in on this. We forget what happens during the week and how important the leadership group is when it comes to situations like this. Vickers, you want to share something there as well?
Yeah, Scoop. It becomes it's massive in terms of, look, if there's one thing that you can never miss out in your squad, regardless of the situation, is your leadership group. And I think if you notice, if you look at, for example, the Springboks, sorry to use the example, but the Springboks yesterday, when there was an injury on the field, Dwayne van Muren was talking to the players. So he was getting the message from obviously at the top and then speaking to the players, because that's experience. So if you're going to go into a week, a game week, and things are not going well, for example, the Lions were cruising. Obviously, after Argentina, they had some good wins. I mean, not so good opposition. But once you start the test matches and things don't go well, someone needs to be stepping up in terms of the communication, the leadership within the squad. And if you don't have that, then you might as well cancel the other 2 test matches, because you're going to lose them. So I think that's what probably Andy's looking at. And I mean, he's not wrong. And at the end of the day, he only coaches a team once every 4 years, and you only play 3, and everyone will charge you on 3 test matches. So I think for him, he's just looking at what he needs from the squad, and obviously taking advantage of the situation.
Fair enough. Let's not forget, Bok women lost against Canada, 50 points to 20. Chile beating Romania, World Cup Romania. Chile beating them by 40 points over the weekend. We've got USA beating Belgium as well, up and coming young rugby country in Europe at the moment. And also, Andy Farrell accuses the Waratahs of heavily watering the pitch to slow down the Lions in Sydney over the weekend. That is hilarious. Nonetheless, Jake White and the Bulls part ways. Jade, we've spoken a million times about Jake White. We've spoken about his utterances, post-match utterances, that is. We've spoken about his selection every single time. This was written on the walls, apparently. Had a fallout with Chris Rousseau, had a fallout with Andries Becker. The players went out of their way to complain about this guy. He was safe and secure until he had a fallout with his coaching staff. Take me through what you think of Jake White and what he has done at the Blue Bulls. We cannot forget what he's done, but losing the change room, losing the connection with your coaching staff. How did you receive the news, and what do you think of Jake White?
I was quite surprised that it ended this way. I actually thought that, Jake White would have more control over his dressing room and over behind the scenes. I mean, we do know that Jake White has a good relationship with the owners of the Blue Bulls. So we do know that, he's respected, and there's two-way respect over there. So, for things to turn this ugly and to turn, the sour so quickly, basically overnight over the past 2 weeks after that URC final, I was quite surprised, with all of the leaks from the dressing room. Now, in all sport, I mean, we've seen it in football so many times. As soon as there's leaks in the camp, it means that the camp is not settled. That means that, there's players are not happy, and most likely the manager's lost the dressing room. So regardless of what manager you are and what coach you are, if you're losing the dressing room, I think, your time's up at that team. And obviously there is frustration when it comes to those players. His time with the Bulls, with all of the money and all of the investment that he has made there, he's been a director of rugby for quite some time there, and we've seen it with all of the academy players, they've been buying from Craven Week, and, all of the players that's been coming through to the Bulls and on their roster. I don't think he'll exactly think successful, because he doesn't really have that title, that championship to write home about. If you look at it, he's been his last 3 UFC finals. And I think if he had won one, would have been a successful turnaround and a successful time at the Bulls. But that's where he'll be judged. We'll judged with all of the silverware and everything that is was chasing, and all of the money that they put into the club. I mean, this post silverware at the end of the day, you want to be winning those trophies, Scoop, and that's where you are judged. So the investment has to pay off. And I think the global supporters would slightly say, you know what, maybe it's the best time now for us to move on and get a new coach. We have the players here, the players getting stronger next year with the likes of Pollard and Serfontein and those guys joining. So maybe a new approach, somebody fresh comes in and takes his team forward. So I think maybe Jake's reached the ceiling for this team.
Oh, reached his ceiling. Hugh, you agree with Jade's post-mortem about Jake, the friendly snake, White?
The one thing that makes me say he maybe hasn't reached his ceiling is because he hasn't had Pollard. He hasn't had a 10 the last few years. And now he would have had Pollard next season. So if you were doing it purely on performance, you would say you get one more season with these latest recruits. But I think when you lose the dressing room, when the players come out against you and say, no, we're not happy with this guy anymore, I think that's it. And, as we heard these rumors a long time ago, guys, let's be honest. So unfortunately, I think once that happens, and, from what I understand, speaking to people who live and work in Pretoria and things, in that kind of culture, in that kind of environment, for the players to come out against Jake and go to the management and say, we think we have a problem, that probably would have been very unpleasant, very stressful for those players, and probably would have been very against their nature to do that, is from what I understand. So I think you have to take it seriously. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but it seems like there's matters beyond rugby at hand here.
Matters beyond rugby. Vickers, your hand is up. Jump in.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to obviously comment on the fact that, as Hugh was saying, I think like he signed Pollard. Jake White signed Pollard. Is Serfontein going to the Bulls? So he's still waiting for Kirtley to come back. I mean, these are the situations that coaches go through and get to this point where I don't want to say unfairly let go, like premature type of thing. I think if he had gotten all those players that he signed for next year, and we see what you can do, then by all means. But every team is a project. We all know every team is a project, and it's what you're working towards when you have a project. And you can't lose 2 finals and obviously beef up your squad, like we're talking about the 10 position. Beef up your squad, trying to get the right players in the mix, and then all of a sudden things just go sour. For me, I still feel the most important in every kind of team is the relationship between the head coach and the staff and the leadership group. Because if those 3 triangles are connected together, I promise you now, a coach can stay in the one team for 10 years. It won't be a problem. But the issue is, if you lose one of those corners within your setup, within your team, then you're in trouble. And it's for us as coaches to be aware and be very aware of the situations that are happening around the team, and always making sure that you're trying to connect those triangles, because those corners. Because if for example, you can't have a fallout with your forwards, your lineups coach and your backline coach, and then at the same time you're not in good state with your leadership group, then you're in trouble as a coach. Then you're 100% in trouble. So at the end of the day, as coaches, I mean, this is advice to some coaches that are coming up as well. If you have your triangle connected, which is your staff and your leadership group, if those 3 are working together, I promise you, the junior players and the players who are just there and are there and about, they can scream as much as they want. There will be no noise that will be heard. But it's once you lose one of those 3 corners and you don't have them in your corner as a head coach, then you're in trouble.
Oof. Fair to say he bit more than he can chew. Huh? Is that correct, Griffin? as a English teacher in this pod.
Yes, just about.
Fair enough. Griffin, what do you think of Andy Farrell accusing the Waratahs of heavily watering the pitch to slow down the Lions on Saturday? Or were the Lions a wee bit slow on the uptake? Maybe too much rugby? I don't know. But your thoughts?
No, I think it was a poor performance from the Lions, and Andy Farrell's been going to Mikel Arteta's school and is dropping a great big dead cat on the table for everybody to distract everybody from the actual performance of his players. So get everybody talking about that instead. Look, is it too much rugby? I don't think so. The reason I say that, and people might not like hearing this, the intensity of these games that the Lions are coming up against, the lower Australian franchise teams without their best players, this is like a 15-on-15 training run, really. So that's why I say it's not too much rugby, because it's not test match intensity. Let's not pretend that it is. It's probably kind of below URC intensity, mid-table URC intensity. So yeah, there's that. And of course, they're rotating the team a lot. I think what we saw against the Waratahs is there's a lot of players who were in that specific team on that specific day who know that their test match chances are over, or were all but over. So they either the motivation is gone, or they were overplaying, trying too hard, trying to fire their last shots, if you like, and it all fell to pieces. So I don't think it's going to have much bearing on anything, because I don't expect many of those players to be playing the final test. But in terms of why it maybe looks so disjointed, I just get the sense that the Lions are spending all of their time in training on attack and this wide attacking shape, which is a bit of a surprise. And there's fundamentals like the set piece and elsewhere restarts that are taking a back seat at the moment, and that's why they look so disjointed.
Wide towards the edges, which is something that someone who's in the Springbok camp has introduced since last year. Vickers, what do you think of this Lions tour so far? What are your takeaways from what you've seen? And if you do have an idea of who might start in that back line, because we're going to touch on the Lions now, and then after the Lions, it's France versus New Zealand. After that, it's the Springboks against Italy. And well, the conversation that Hugh doesn't want to have, 18-0. But we'll get there at the end. Vickers, your thoughts on this Lions tour so far and what you've seen on attack, and as Hugh has alluded to, that they might be paying too much attention on attack and playing with width, trying to get to the edges. We've seen what Tony Brown has introduced with the Springboks. We've seen what the Allblacks have been doing, obviously, for over decades now, to play on the edges and then bring it back in. But what do you think of this Lions performances? Force by 50, Reds by 40, stumbled a little bit against the Waratahs.
Yeah, Scoop, I think, look, it's always going to be tough when you have a team. You have to coach a team like the Lions, because you bring in a couple of guys from different unions, you bring them in the setup, and you try and do your philosophy, if I can call it like that. And I think that's what is difficult about the position. But you also look at what are the team that you play against, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And I think with looking at Farrell and the way they're trying to play now, is that they're not trying to give away too much, but at the same time, they're trying to get to see who will be starting, obviously, for that first test. So it is a very difficult situation to be in. For me, the one thing that I do say that they lacked on big time in that Waratahs game, I didn't see any dominant carries, like dominant ball carriers. I think they lacked a little bit of dominant ball carriers. I'm not sure if it's because of the guys that played in those positions, but I didn't feel like there was a dominant within those carries. So for me, that's one of the things that I would change, is that when you go into into the first test, you have to have a solid ball carrier who's going to give you that momentum. You have to make sure that you have someone in the backs who's going to give you that momentum. And I think Tuipolotu wasn't doing that this past game, but Bandia Key in the second game, he did that quite well against the Reds. He did that very well against the Reds. He gave them a lot of go forward ball. And I think that's the difference between the two players. Although I would love to see Tuipolotu starting, but I think at this point, for what the Lions need for the test match, they need Bandia Key to be going forward. But I don't know. I wasn't impressed with the combination of Bandia Key and Hugh Jones. I thought there was a little bit of not knowing each other. I mean, we all know you play once you play a lot with the play, you tend to know what they want and what they're gonna do. And I think that's what we've seen with Tuipolotu. They play together in the club, they play together at national team, so it was easier for them to gel yesterday. But again, I would go as far as, if I would pick a backline, I would go obviously Goodison Park. I would go Finn Russell. I would definitely go low and 11, 12 Aki, 13 Hugh Jones, 14 Freeman, and then probably 15 for me would be Kinghorn.
Kinghorn, 100%. Fair enough. Fluency, alignment, cohesion, Jade. Those are the words that stick out from what Vickers is talking about. From what you've seen, what are your thoughts?
I think from what I've seen, there's been glimpses of outstanding, attacking shape, especially the pod system that they're using. They're not using that 3-pod system where they're looking to hit. Previously, they had the diamond shape, that was more of a 3-arrow system now. I think it's Baa Baas that brought it really into Northern Hemisphere rugby. So any one of the 3 runners can be hit at a time. And I think that's a real positive, attacking shape that they've been giving. And the speed of play also, you can't take it away from them. The likes of, your Pollards and your likes of Earls and Curries, those kind of loosies, running on, getting off a tip-ons, getting offloads, taking an extra 20 meters at times, that's been crucial to them. However, I don't know how this is going to work when the game is slowed down. Scoop, I don't know. Because in that first test, there's going to be a lot of emotion. There's going to be a lot of, pushing and shoving in the first 20 minutes. There's going to be a lot of chit-chat, a lot of frustrations. Are they going to be able to slow it down, or are they going to go, full force, full speed that you see with Ireland, one way, no other way? Because for me, like Puyo said, I think maybe in that case, in the loosies, Jack Conan has to play because he's the only real big ball carrier that they have there, unless they're going to shift Burn to 6, or maybe have Jason at 6, something like that. But they're going to have to look at that. They're going to have to look at getting the balance in the loosies, making sure they have enough ball carriers. And what are they going to do in terms of Genji? They're going to start who's on the bench. But from what I've seen, the Force, they were brilliant from the first minute, but the Reds was a lot of handling errors that came in. And there were a lot of frustration when they played against the Reds, and the Warata also yesterday. So there can be a lot of errors. They can leave a lot of points out there, with this game plan, playing at the speed. But no, Australia doesn't have a small pack. If you're going to add Skelton, you're going to add, you're looking at Valentini and Wilson. They're not small guys, so they'll be able to, to stand the fight, for their first 20 minutes. How the Lions are going to react in that first 20 minutes, they're going to go to blitz them, or they're going to look to play complete helter-skelter rugby, or, do they have that in their artillery, to slow the game a little bit, to go 3 or 4 phases more than what they've been doing against these teams. Because honestly, against these teams, I don't think they've been put through the phases that much. And like viewers also said, and I think it's you, they haven't also been tested with all of their set plays. Yes, scrum, they look good. Lineouts, they haven't really been tested. We haven't really seen, their lineouts really been stretched by that Argentina game with were fresh. And also the third set piece that we talk about, kickoff restarts. What is the exit play? And they haven't really been tested there as well, in this warm-up game. So, all of that aspect we'll have to see. We'll have to wait for the first test. Well, mind you, Australia wasn't good this morning in Fiji as well. But they will get better against the Lions. And obviously a coach like Joe Smith will have a plan. So that's just for me, how they're going to adapt. Are they going to stick to this one plan of Andy Farrell, or is there something else, that they're going to look at when they are playing the Wallabies? How they're going to slow the game down? What are they going to do in that situations, How is their kicking game? Look, Finn Russell has been brilliant as a runner, but how's his kicking game? There could be rain in certain areas in Australia. What is the kicking game? Is he going to dictate the game of the boot, or is he going to give that more to Gibson Park to do from 9. So all of that aspects we still need to see from the Lions.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Hugh?
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of what's happened in Australia so far is a big bluff from Andy Farrell, because if all they've kind of done in attack is kind of go wide, get the ball to the wingers as much as possible, or in the Waratahs game, just kind of do what you see in front of you. But the one thing that the Lions can always come back to, and because, the Lions is a selection from a bigger playing pool than any of the constituent nations, obviously, what the Lions are always able to do is just pick the biggest players. Now, this isn't the biggest Lions team ever, but the number of big players that they've got to pick from is loads more than the Wallabies. And you would think, but you can correct me here if I'm miles off, but you would think that you wouldn't be surprised if they just turn up to the first test and just go ultra physical, ultra keep it tight, because I don't know, you kind of, that doesn't take tons of work, in matches to build up making it work, to my simple mind anyway.
I fully agree.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah. I was thinking, Scoop, sorry, Scoop. I was thinking exactly what Hugh was talking about, is because, remember, this is their first test. So they can literally pick the biggest team and the biggest ball carriers and just say, soften them up for the next 2 tests. So, you can play that, because at the end of the day, remember, like you said now, the selection for the British and Irish Lions is wild. It's wide. Whereas for the Australia, if they lose, for example, Angus Bell at loosehead, they lose one of the locks, they lose 8th man Valentino, and maybe they lose one, like a Callaway type of thing, they're going to be stretched. They're going to have to go and find. Or you could see Donaldson start, and then Donaldson out, and Lolosio starts the whole 2 more tests. So it is going to be difficult. So I wouldn't take that away from if Andy Farrell would decide to do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, looking at what happened with the Boks in Rugby Championship, the first test in Brisbane. It was simple, it was direct, confrontational, physical, and that's all it took for the Springboks to put 30 plus on the board in the first half already. So I think Farrell probably now is trying to probably see a bit of combinational work, but in essence, first test, guns blazing, physicality, confrontational, direct rugby. Make it as simple as possible. Test them aerially. Bombs the whole time is exactly what France did. So there's nothing from what we've seen being very structured from the Lions. Let's be honest. We haven't seen, like Jade has mentioned as well, we haven't seen a lot of dominant mauling or keeping things simple, pick up and drive, or getting first receiver from the deck from the 9 or 10, basically offloading to a forward, taking it up the middle. It has been a whole helter-skelter, throw as much ball around, get it back, get it to the wings, recycle, bring it back, and then see how well the opponents, who are mid-level strength at this point, how well they can maintain that. The first 20 minutes, evenly balanced. The opponents come guns blazing. They get tested a bit. I think the Lions have had a very slow start in every game that they've played so far. So that first quarter is going to be a very important one, maybe in that first test. If I'm Joe Schmidt, I'm probably looking at those first 20 minutes as an opportunity for me to kind of maybe put them in under a bit of pressure. We haven't seen this Lions team having to crawl back or claw their way back into a match. If you're leading by 14 to 0 in the first 20 minutes, can they work their way back up into a lead within the game itself? But yeah, those are there up in the air to see if we will get any chance of seeing this Lions team basically being tested anyway. But the first test is still in 2 weeks' time. Still a long way to go. They still have to face the Brumbies next week, during the week, and they still have to face the Anzac team, which is made up of Australians and former All Black players. That's also going to be a good tester for Andy Farrell and his men. Guys, moving along to the All Blacks. France sending apparently a D team, I think, Jade, to New Zealand. For those that watch Top 14 have told us this is not an average team. Be careful. Justin Marshall on the breakdown has been miffed. He has been disappointed. All Black fans all around the world disappointed by the team that France picked for this tour. First test came around Saturday. 4 points in it. 27-31. Jade, 27-31. Is it a true reflection of how the game was played? Talk to me.
Well, it's a true reflection of how the game was played. If you're looking at the stats and you're looking at, you're taking a team that had 13 line breaks versus a team that had only. You're looking at your 13 line breaks to 4 line breaks. You're looking at a team that has so much position. Looking at a team that had 3 talked off tries with the team. Oh, whether that's right or wrong, that's the team who made the decision. I mean, the All Blacks' real frustration would be the amount of points they left out there. Regardless of how they underestimated France and how the game went, they were not clinical enough. And for me, I think that was the big problem with the All Blacks. They weren't clinical enough. They showed a new attack shape. We spoke about it. They've nice things, but guilty at times of overplaying. They still got this. I said yesterday on the group, they still got this panic about them. If things don't go their way, forcing passes instead of just going more direct a few more times, trying to do the hard yards and then going out wide. But it's been all helter-skelters, all trying to razzle-dazzle too much. I think for them, also at times, they had too many playmakers on the field. Because you're looking at it, you had Cam Roycott, you had Jody Barrett, Bowden Barrett, and David McKenzie. And, Will Jordan's not a bad playmaker as well. And if you're looking at it, you think, that's an awesome backline, but sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen doesn't really work. So maybe, it's maybe something also they can look at in terms of their selection and how they want to move forward. But overall, Scoop, I think their forwards did well. I think your Fabian Holland, your Castillo Wallis did well in debut. You can't ask for much more from Fabian Holland on debut. He was good at line-out time. The line-out time was good. Scrums, they were solid. They were decent. I mean, it wasn't the best French pack also. However, the Achilles heel still came back to bite them. I mean, look at twice exits they just got an 8-point lead coming into the second Africa. He only knocks the ball on and France scores from there, from a kickoff receive. And All Blacks scored a try, get back. Cam Royko doesn't make the exit. Kicks the ball straight back into France. From there, they score again. So looking at those soft tries, still coming back and haunting this All Black team. And it's been going on for 4 or 5 years now. So those are the things they need to iron out in the game before they can really put up their hand, to really contest and compete, and state their claim as being one of the best teams in the world. But for now, there's a lot of hard work to be done there. If I'm Scott Robinson, I'm disappointed a tad bit, but I'll also be happy that they were pushed this way. There's things to work on. They've only been in camp for, 8 to 9 days before this game, so they will get better. We assume they'll get better. We know they're not the best starters when it comes to test match rugby, but if you look at what France put out there, and not taking anything away from them, that was a gutsy performance from France. I just think the attack, and I want Whiet to come in there. I think the All Black attack makes it easy for you to scramble. I think sometimes, it's easy to get a scramble defense on against them, where I feel they've got the cattle to go more direct at times. They've got the skill, so they should look at that as well, But other than that, we look forward to next week to see what it does. I don't think he'll make a lot of changes. But yeah, yesterday's standout performance for me, obviously Fabian Holland. I think Bowden Barrett had a good game as well, I think.
Earth to Bloemfontein, Jade. We've lost him. Because Jade is putting out a comment towards you regarding attack, regarding shape, and what your thoughts are regarding how the All Blacks played, because I also felt like these guys could have gone a bit more direct at times. I saw a few pick and goes, and I thought, okay, well, if you can pick and go, guys, I mean, it's going well. You've gained 20 meters. That's good purchase on just simple pick and go. But at times and after the game as well, listening to the players, I think I listened to 4 or 5 players. talking about, oh, we know the roof was going to be closed. So number 2, we have to play fast. Number 3, I'm like, okay, jeepers, guys. Yes, no one is stopping you from playing fast. But are you earning the right to play fast? Are you doing the basics right to play fast? Are you protecting the ball? Because we can all scream and shout about playing fast from the top of Table Mountain in Cape Town, right? But if you're not doing the primary role, hit, go down, place the ball, one person cleans over or 2 people are cleaning over, that ball is protected. Roy God has a clean access to the ball, 2 hands. He already knows who to hit right before he even gets to the ball, either left or right. He doesn't have to think twice, because there were times where he gets to the ruck, he looks to the right, it's congested. He looks to the left, it's also congested. So now, how do we play fast when there's rush defense as an element? But if you pick and go, you're gaining purchase, because now you narrowing that defense, you're closing those, you're bringing those pillars, the pillars and the guys right next to the pillars, you're bringing them in, you're sucking them into towards the ruck, which means now there can be space for a player like a Proctor and a player like a Damian McKenzie on those back passes to start moving around into space. But there's no point having those players if there is no space, right? But yeah, take me through, Vickers, the attack, what you thought about it, and what do you think of the All Blacks and France?
Look, Scoop, I think, yes, New Zealand is still one of the few, I think one of the only teams, if not the only one, that's attacking of 10 of wide rucks. And that makes it very difficult, because remember, if you can have line speed on your defense and you're going to rush hard at the attacker, if there's an extra pass, which is obviously from 9 to 10, 10 to the forwards, then you're always going to get ball and all, and you're always going to be in a very tough situation. I understand if you do it off quick ball, because sometimes when you get quick ball, the defense is not set, so you can play off your 10 and then play 9 to 10, 10 to the forwards, then that can work. But most of the time, if that wide ruck is disrupted, if that wide ruck is slow and you're not getting your quick ruck, then it becomes very difficult to play off your 10. But obviously, I've seen New Zealand change a little bit in terms of they forcing. It's almost like the first receiver is standing at a 45-degree angle, and then he's playing those forwards flat. He's not even moving. So for me, it's like okay, then why are you even doing? So that's one thing I would change if I would have to change their attack. When I look at the attack, I honestly think it's improved massively. You can see that they've worked quite hard on it. It's improved massively. So now every time they go behind, so out the back, there's always someone off the shoulders to give that security. I call it a security line in case someone is rushing up. So for me, I've seen that there's a massive improvement in that. But if you're gonna do that, then as a team, then you must remember your 13 and your 12 need to be bold players. They need to be able to do basically play like a playmaking role, which is, I don't think Jordy is bad at it. I don't think he's bad at it at all. But he can also improve, because his first instinct is to take crash ball. So they will have to find players to obviously get those roles and use them in the right positions in terms of their attack structure. For me, I think France wanted to prove the world wrong with the news. I mean, I think Gautier would have probably used the B team factor quite well to motivate his players. He probably would have been talking about it. So those players wanted to prove a point, and I think at some point they did. And I mean, it's credit to the big hits that they put in. They put in quite a good number of good hits in the New Zealand. And I think when I look at the two teams, New Zealand had something to lose, but France didn't. And I think that's what played against New Zealand, because New Zealand was under pressure. But can you imagine how nice it must feel now for for Razor to be sitting on a Sunday evening and thinking, I've won one game. Yes, it was not good. Yes, it was not nice, but I've won it. So meaning, if I go to next weekend and I improve my attack and I improve my defense and I get the right selections, if he's missed selections and we win that one, we've won the series. There's no more pressure. So he's sitting in a good position. So Galtier, the only thing he can do now is fly in one or two guys to even challenge for New Zealand even more. So yeah, but for me, the game was good. I thought it was pretty exciting. Yes, there were some stages where I thought New Zealand could have done better. But I mean, like again, it always happens. The first test of the year for most teams. I mean, these guys come together and then they play a test in the Boks were lucky to get obviously a run against the Baa Baas, but we didn't see that yesterday. But yeah, so it's always tough. But I think for Razor, he should be sitting happy because obviously he's won the first test, which is something that you always want as a coach, is to kickstart. Good or bad, it doesn't matter.
Fair enough. Griffin, following French top 14, following URC, following some Super Rugby, but you probably have more of an understanding of who Galtier chose for this weekend and are probably more well-versed to understanding the strength of these guys. But from us sitting from the South, even though some of us are in the Netherlands, sitting in the South thinking, we want the Duponts, we want the Ramoses, because where I'm sitting, All Blacks were close in Stade de France last year, lost by 1 point, and also in the last dying minutes of the game. And now wanting those very same players to fly down to New Zealand to come and prove a point in New Zealand. Because I think there's also some level of, my God, I want to play these guys again, from any All Black player that played in end of the year tour or the autumn series. At the back of their minds, there must have been some, I really want to play these guys again. We just lost. I mean, looking at how 2021 result was, 40 points scored against the All Blacks, looking at our 2023 result, losing in the World Cup. And then last year, coming very close. And then now to them sending what is called a B team to travel down to New Zealand. How strong was this French team compared to the team that the All Blacks played in the autumn series?
Well, your phrasing of the question, as with the question of any referee scoop, is the important thing. So how strong is the team that played on Saturday compared to the France first choice team? The answer is every single player in that France team could be upgraded by there is someone better currently sat at home or in Ibiza, which is where the Bordeaux boys are now. I can tell you, on holiday in Ibiza, there is someone better than them who can come in and take their jersey for every single player on that pitch who played on Saturday. How strong is that France team compared to the B team or the C team of another country, like the B team of, I don't know, Argentina or England or Australia? A lot better. But this is the thing about France's depth, is its depth in potential. It's hypothetical depth. And we saw it come through, like Segons, who played 10 yesterday. I thought he had a fabulous game. He's probably not anywhere near the France starting team, and when the likes of Untermack, Jalibert, Ramos are all back available, he's probably not even going to make the squad for the Six Nations unless there's an injury. So that's kind of how we're talking. But in his own right, he is a fabulous player. You could go down that team and pick lots of examples of players who aren't probably going to be in the matchday 23 for many, if any, autumn test or Six Nations games. But how do they compare to the third choice guy for anyone else in the top 10 of World Rugby, apart from South Africa, probably pretty favorably, probably pretty well. So that's the context that you have to have with these guys, is that how good are they compared to the France first choice team? Not as good on any level. How good are they compared to the B team of someone else? Probably better.
Fair enough. Now I want to tap into this depth conversation. I see a lot of tweets around depth and everyone hyping up this element of depth. I like the fact that you said Ramos, Intermark, and I think Jalibert as well. And you said if there was an injury to those players, hypothetically, Jalibert and Intermark are injured. Now we're shifting Ramos from 15 to 10, right? Speaking of depth, speaking on depth alone, wouldn't that then, I mean, like, hypothetically, this is the World Cup, you get Jalibert, Intermark injured in the first round and they're out for the rest of the competition. Now, we speak of depth as if, or the people that have spoken about depth, they speak of depth as if France will have the depth to get into a World Cup and drive their way into a final. But one or two injuries, then there is a bit of a shakeup, depth or no depth, right? Because some players mentally, would they be up for it in a quarterfinal, hypothetically? We saw how France got knocked out in a quarterfinal with a full strength squad without any injuries. Now we're telling me that with the depth, you've got players that are capable to drive France away in Australia, to drive them through a final because of depth.
Well, I don't think it's not quite correct to say that they were knocked out in the quarterfinal with no injuries. They were missing Roman Untermack, who's their first choice 10, and Antu Dupont had just come back from face surgery, was rushed back from face surgery to come and play. And they were playing against the team that is now in the conversation for the greatest rugby team of all time, is the current Springboks. So there's that kind of thing. And it was by 1 point in arguably the greatest rugby match that's ever been played. So I would say that it depends how you measure depth. Depth of talent, France, absolutely. No problems at all. You know, Atisogbe, for example, the 15. Is he France's third choice 15? I don't know. But he played superbly on yesterday, and the New Zealand media were christening him the best player on the pitch. 9 out of 10 he was given in the New Zealand Herald. So the talent is there. But talent isn't the only measure of depth. You've got to talk about cohesion. You've got to talk about minutes. You've got to talk about, if you give 10 players each 5 minutes off the bench in games across the season, you could say, oh, look at all the depth that we built. No, you haven't really. You've capped a lot of players. You've used a lot of players. But it's not like they've had meaningful game time in important situations and had a chance to deliver. So that's different. And that's what I always say. That's what sets apart Springboks and France depth. And those are the two that are set apart for me. Those two are apart from the rest in terms of depth. But what sets the Springboks again apart from France is that Rassie actually uses the depth. He brings the players in, he rotates them, he gives them all a go. Look, who's this Morne van den Berg guy who's just been playing for the Springboks last 2 games? Where's he come from? And now how far is he in the conversation for the Springbok 9 jersey now? Is he above Jaden? That's a conversation we can have in a minute. Or the 10 situation. No, I can't emphasize this enough, guys. No team in the world that I'm aware of is rotating 3 fly halves game on game on game. Sasha, Mani, Andre. No one's doing it. Only the Springboks are doing it. So there's depth and there's depth. There's theoretical depth. There's depth of talent, which France have. And there's actual, usable, utilizable, it's there, look, I can point to it, depth that the Springboks have.
110%. 110% Mbumelelo. 110% scrumming fly off. Hope y'all are listening. Only on the scoop, guys. Anyway, Hugh, about the game itself now, before we jump onto the Springboks and Morne van den Berg. France versus New Zealand. France came close. The All Blacks have a lot of work to do.
Sorry, did you say the All Blacks have a lot of work to do?
Yes, the All Blacks have a lot of work
Yeah,
to
for
do.
me, they're working too hard for their tries. Now, I hear what you and a lot of people are saying around the 3 tries disallowed, and yes, that is important context. However, we have to also add the context that this was a trend all of last year as well. So let me just read you the numbers. So New Zealand against France had 62% possession on Saturday, which is the most of any test team. I've gone down, I've looked at every single test match that was played yesterday. New Zealand had more possession than anybody. Anybody. I'm talking Italy, Georgia, Fiji, anybody. They had the most carries of anybody. They had the most rucks of anybody. They had the most passes of everybody. 259 passes in a game of rugby. Do you realize how far ahead that is of everybody else? And then they had, let me have a look here, 31% possession in France's 22. And 3 tries. Now, you might say, like, great. We had all this ball, had this possession. All it has to do is click, and then we're scoring tries for fun. Okay, I hear that. But then we had the exact same numbers last year with Razor. It was the same thing. All the ball, all the talk, none of the action, none of the tries. And then if you can contrast that to France, France had 75 rucks in this whole game. They had 3 offloads in this whole game. They went direct. There wasn't the razzle-dazzle from France. Yes, they had one great try from a scrum in their own half, which was wonderful. But really, where France's tries came from were all pick and goes. And they had 5 entries to the New Zealand's 22, which is the least of any test team yesterday. And they scored 3 tries. Their 22 conversion was the highest. Now, it's 1 game's worth of data. It's a one-off game. But if you compare to how hard the All Blacks had to work for their tries compared to how hard France had to work for their tries, New Zealand are not just working harder than France. New Zealand are working harder than any team in the world right now. Tries are requiring more expended efforts by the All Blacks than any other team. So, and like I said, if with the 3 disallowed tries, yes, important context, but this isn't a new thing. This has been something that the All Blacks have struggled with ever since Razor came in.
Yes. Hence, Razor has a ton of work. If it doesn't work next week, Razor out. It's as simple as that. Vickers, Monet van der Berg.
Can I come in there quickly? Can I come in there quickly on you's comment there in terms of the position? That's been a big issue with New Zealand rugby the past year. That's what I highlight, that they've, a lot of pundits, if you're listening to the likes of Murray Maxted, you're listening to the likes of Martin Devil and them, all of their podcasts and stuff, and a lot of them are actually highlighting the problem in terms of the position. Hence why they feel that they don't have enough position. They're not getting enough position. When they are getting position, they're kicking it away. And hence why you saw a guy like Tupu Vai coming in the team, to secure the line out so they can get aerial possession. Obviously, yesterday, the box kicking and the aerial game, of up and unders was nowhere. It was poor yesterday. They gave front a foothold in the game from the start there. But possession and territory has been a big problem for New Zealand in the past year under Razor. And there's an aspect where they feel that, they're not getting enough possession. So I don't agree with you completely there in terms of they've always had possession. I think yesterday was one of the first times that they had possession so much, because I look at the 2 tests against South Africa, they averaged like 40% possession. It was a game against France as well last year. They averaged again, under 50% possession. So something that they are trying to do. But now, like you said, the important thing is now they've got this possession. What are they doing? They're overplaying. So something that Razor now really has to look at and say, okay, right now we got the ball, we're going to have to play with it. Because Scoop, we can go back to this. We can look in the era of Steve Hansen when they were absolutely brilliant. They had glimpses in the game, They weren't a team that would have all of the ball, everything. They relied on the counter-attack, and they had glimpses in the game.
Worked from turnovers.
Work from turnovers. They give you the ball and they work on it. They have their foothold in the game, 20 minutes where they'll bury you. But other than that, turnovers, they score from there. So something new to New Zealand rugby, and it's something new that Razor's working on, is getting all of this ball positioning, doing something with it. But now it's where you spoke about, they have to be more patient and more clinical on attack and make the right decisions in the final third.
I still want 50 points. Otherwise, next weekend, Razor out, Razor out. Razor out. Yeah, we must bring in Dave Rennie, Vickers. I'm kidding.
Sorry, Scoop. That's another thing that we don't think about as coaches, as obviously rugby lovers, is that coaches have a typical way of relaying the message. All the coaches want to win games, but it's how you emphasize on winning the games. And now we're talking about, obviously, New Zealand is struggling. They playing with the ball too much, and they're struggling to get easy tries or quick. They're trying to score. They struggle to score quick. Most of the time, that reflects into the head coach, because the head coach is probably giving the players the freedom to play. And if the head coach is giving the players the freedom to play, then when things don't work and work against it, then it becomes the coach needs to obviously quickly see that and put things into place. That's why a lot of coaches, people always say, no, this coach is he's an authoritarian type of leader. He tells people what to do. It's because he has seen enough that you guys can't take control of the game. So I'm going to take control of the game for you by doing ABC. So maybe that's one of the things that's going through New Zealand at the moment. And up until Razor recognizes the problem or recognizes the situation, nothing will change.
100% spot on, Vickers. 110% spot. I mean, yesterday you watch the game and you go, yeah, Barrett has got way too much freedom for my liking, and he does whatever he wants. He's doing it at the Blues. He's been doing it at the All Blacks since he's been involved with Hansen, to Foster, now Razor. It's the same pattern over and over. And at times it baffles me that Razor maybe doesn't want to take control, because I mean it's as simple as let the forwards take charge. When everything is set, when the platform and the foundation is set, then the backs can wrestle. But if there's no platform to work from, guys, we're speaking international rugby where rush defense is in your face every second. You don't have time to be thinking about back passes and other things. Literally, you don't have time, right? So how can you play percentage rugby to get your team in the right areas of the game? Looking at how Hugh has spoken about the French number 10, he's number 5 on the list. But he got the directive from Gaultier, no nonsense, no stupidity, get the ball up into the edges, put the other wingers under pressure. And guess what happened? France were playing in the right areas of the game. Look at how Beauden Barrett kicked the ball. Look at how Cam Roydegaard kicked the ball. Maybe one or two were contestable. But other than that, the ball, I mean, the French guys had so much time and space to catch the ball, think, look around, assess the space, kick the ball. There's no pressure. So at the end of the day, yeah, man, I agree with you, because to be honest, there's too much freedom. And he also admitted to the fact that he wants them to play with a lot of freedom. He wants them to make those 50-50 offloads. That's why they want to play fast, because at the end of the day, they're struggling with what? They're struggling with beating the rush defense. If you want to play quick, make quick rucks, the rush defense doesn't set, right? If you want to offload and keep the ball being passed around like we're playing basketball, the rush defense doesn't set. So they haven't come up with a proper strategy. Or not to say this is not a proper strategy. If it pays off, it pays off. But that's going to be one test out of 10, right? But what about the other 9? How do you consolidate? Look at how they lost against Argentina and then went to Wellington and put Argentina on to the sword. Or not Wellington, Eden Park, right? Put 40 on them without Argentina scoring any points or little points in that game. They played direct, they played physical, they played percentage, but it still gave them purchase to put 40 points. If they did that on Saturday against France, I guarantee you they would have put 40 on them. But no, we want to throw around the ball. Yes, I understand it's the first test. It's a year in for him in this position. He understands how to prepare versus a guy that came in last year against England who probably didn't understand a few things. Now he understands the situation. He understands the way things work. He understood end of last year that he had France coming over, right? So at the end of the day, I think I agree with you there, because there's too much freedom maybe, and you can see it with the under 20s as well. throwing the ball around, not getting the right to move forward. Not setting or laying the good platform to get the guys going. They've got a skillful backline who can match any other black backline in the world. But the thing is, you don't get to see how skillful and how good they are because everything is rushed, everything is panic, everything is helter skelter. But anyway, let's move on to the Springboks. Die Bokke versus Italy. Hugh, Italy, second string, third string. Which one did they send over?
Pretty second string. There was Menincello in there. There was a couple of front rowers in there. Not a strong Italy team by any means. There's a lot of probably a Menincello aside, probably missing their best half a dozen players in this game.
Fair enough, but I mean, first half, Springbok looked like a team that would be cruising to a 60-pointer, but somehow, somewhere, just like the French, the Italians kind of stuck in there, and then in the second half, I think they played a completely different rugby game, the Italians, versus what the Springboks did in the second half. Even though they got purchased and they scored points, obviously, once scoreboard pressure was set and done, Italy was generally basically chasing the game, even though some people might say 21-14, Italy won that second half versus what the Boks did in the second half. But from your thoughts, what did you see from the Springboks, first of all? And obviously, how happy to see that the Italian, maybe not so great side, but performing at Loftus Highveld, right? Especially when it comes to the second half, right? We always talk about the Highveld issue for teams traveling to South Africa. But at this point, it seems like a thing that's slightly going away, where teams are not concerned about that anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I think playing in the URC is teaching these teams a lesson, which is the majority of the Italian team. Where to begin with? Talk about the Boks first. I wasn't very impressed with South Africa, I have to be honest. So I wasn't impressed by South Africa's physicality. And I know that's going to sound mental, but I'll justify it. So South Africa had 57% of the ball in this game, which is a lot of the ball. And they had 48% of their possession, nearly half of the time that they had the ball, they were in Italy's 22. Now, I know you're saying, but if you look at how South Africa scored their tries, it was them crashing over, crash, bash, smash, getting over that way. But the amount of ball that they had and the opportunity that they had, it was very blunt, very dull rugby, I felt. And I didn't see many shapes. I didn't see much detail. It was a bit like watching the Stormers. They're like, okay, you have the ball, see what you can do. Oh, okay, right, you haven't gone anywhere. Okay, I'll have the ball back, see what I can. Maybe he can have the ball and see what he can do. And I think it was just a little bit, I don't know whether it's just complacency, rustiness, or Razzie saying, look, guys, let's not show our best tools in this one. It's not worth it. But I was impressed by how Italy were. If you go back and you watch the game again, watch how many times a South African makes a carry and they get stopped on the gain line by an Italian. And like I say, Italy not famous for being a physical team, and this isn't Italy's strongest team. So I was disappointed. If you compare to the ball carries we saw from France and New Zealand in the earlier game, there was a lot more venom, there was a lot more post-contact meters, there was a lot more drive on those carries, for me, in my opinion. So
it's an age thing.
Well, we'll come to that. So I was disappointed with the Boks from that point of view. Now, they controlled the game. They never looked like losing the game. I thought Curly Arendse, how annoying must it be to be Curly Arendse, where you're not even the most famous short winger wearing a scrum cap in your own team. But I thought he was South Africa's best player head and shoulders. Cheslin had a tough game. For me, Cheslin needs to put the ball on the toe more. He always, if you can box Cheslin against the touchline, and he realizes like, oh, there's not enough space for me to go past you here. Like even Chile, if you watch Chile yesterday, they would get 3 passes, bang, 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 to the touchline, ball on the toe, and 40 meters made. Cheslin, I understand that his superpower is ball in hand and is stepping. But sometimes if you manage to box him in, he just goes, oh, okay, I can't step you. I'll just pass to the guy inside me. And they end up losing meters, not gaining them. So I would like to see Cheslin put in more kicks, grab the ball more. That's just my opinion. So an unimpressive game from the box, I felt. Lack of impact from the bench. I thought from an Italian side, like I said, I was impressed by their physicality. In terms of the expectations, you thought they would get run over, and they didn't. For the majority, considering how much ball they gave the Springboks in their own 22, which was too much. And I thought that Garbisi, who came off the bench, which is the brother of Paulo was the fly half. This guy, Garbisi, was the scrum half, came off the bench. I thought he upped the tempo, and I thought he brought some real zip to the game. And I thought that their attacking shape was very nice. And they should have scored another try. But Simon Gazy, I don't know what he's doing for that one where Aronson puts him into touch. That was an awful finish. So they should be really disappointed with that. But end of the day, I don't know how much I'd read into this game. It's a bit of a nothing match. And I would hope that the Springboks have got more up their sleeve when we get towards the Rugby Championship.
Yeah. I think, man, there's lots to think about. Springboks in this game. I like the fact that you pointed out the gain line carry, point of contact, really not getting a lot of purchase or a lot of yards within those. And a few times, man, Itzabeth was what are those tackles called? Grass cutters. It's as if now teams know if they're going to play teams with bigger people, or your RG Sneemans, your Itzabeths, your Luad Diagas, there's no point trying to stand up at the point of contact, but rather stop them in their tracks with the grass cutter. As they carry, did you see how many times Itzabeth, when he got the ball and into the carry, his legs were always in the air, which is very dangerous, mind you. Very dangerous. But now refs are not blowing it. So if they're not blowing it, then you get to stop the big men in their tracks. So you're not going to gain a lot of yards, because now as you make contact, you're falling literally just within a meter from that point of contact. So there's not a lot of go forward in that sense. Vickers, your thoughts on the game, your thoughts on the box and Italy, because we cannot not give them credit on how they performed away from home.
Scoop, no, listen, Hugh put it nicely. I think the Italy were very good yesterday in terms of how they disrupted everything that the Boks were trying to do. But I also wonder, this is a question to the panel. You go a full week of loading, pre-match, obviously marketing everything against the Baa Baas. You get to the game, you find that it's easier. And the week of the Italy game, there's not much that's really being spoken about, if I can put it like that. So it's just a matter of South Africa's playing Italy, and that's it. We've beaten them many times. We lost to them in 2016, I think. And most of the games were big scores. So there's not much that's been talked about in the week of the Italy game. So my question to the panel is, when the Boks were ahead by 28 points, do you think the players went, it's just normal of the same thing? And then that's when they slacked off a bit. And I think with what Hugh was talking about Cheslin, I think the Boks started counter-attacking a lot more. And they just played into Italy's hands, because Italy were just so hungry. And we always forget about, in sport, in rugby especially, we always forget that tackling doesn't need talent. It needs bravery. And if you can get 15 brave players on the field who want to tackle the S living out of the other team, chances are you're going to hurt them. And I think that was surprising yesterday from my side in terms of what I see from Italy. They just wanted to hurt the guys that were on the field. And they proved their point. And they did. Mm. And now the question is, when the Boks go to PE, I can 100% tell you guys it's going to be a different game, because now they will be up for it.
Anger.
Now they will be up for it because they've almost felt like they were embarrassed. So at this point for me, yes, 42-24 is still a good, comfortable win, a good, comfortable score. But I can tell you that the coaching staff is probably not happy, because there was a time in the second half when Italy was just grinding on that score. They were just grinding on that score. Had that try not being that player that was over the try line pisses me off. If that player scored that try and then they came back to do what they did the following few minutes, the score would have been much closer before the Boks would have obviously changed and went on about their business. So for me, that's one thing that I feel like the Boks underestimated the Italian team going after the 28 points. I'm not saying before, guys. I'm saying after the 28 points, because if you remember, the 28 points came quite quickly and it came easy. And I mean, for a debutant like Monet van der Berg to score 2 tries within the first half, for me, that tells you that everyone was comfortable. Everyone didn't look like they were in panic mode. And I think that's where Italy got the oomph to get into the game, is because they realized that, you know what, if we can either catch on 60 or 70, or we can go and fight and make them think about next week. And that's what they did.
Yeah, no, because spot on. Like I said as well, leading to my question to Hugh as well regarding that game. After 28 points, like everyone thought, okay, well, we're chasing 60 or 70 for real. And probably everyone went to sleep. And also, I mean, there was a moment, I think you posted a lot of Z's. There was a moment between minute 42 and I think about the 57th minute or something like that, where there was absolutely nothing happening in that game. Errors, knock-ons, going back to the TMO for this, going back to the TMO for that. And you're like, what is happening? And then up until like the last quarter, things got a bit exciting again. Also things like that, you know. I mean, that's when teams, like I said in the conversations we were having, is that if you lose a bit of like your 2%, 3% concentration playing against a team that is hungry. France, we saw it, they got a sniff and their tails were up, you know. Italy, they got a sniff, their tails were up as well. And if they didn't have, like you said, because if they didn't have that try disallowed, we could be looking at a completely different picture, because now you are forced to play under pressure in front of your home crowd, knowing at the back of your mind that you've got a militant coach sitting in the booth, probably fuming at the way you're performing today. And now you're probably thinking, shit, next week, I'm probably not even starting, you know? Your mind goes into a whirlwind of thoughts. And then comes in the bomb squad, then it's also quite the same thing, right? Nothing improves. But if you compare it to how Italy performed, when that 9 came in, as you mentioned, I forgot his name, but there was a bit of a zip, there was a bit of urgency, there was a bit of quick ball. And the breakdowns, I mean, the Italians fought every tooth and nail in those breakdowns, which slowed down a lot of Bok ascendancy, and also one-off player from the scrum off. I mean, the players that come to mind, Luard, Itzabeth, and Malcolm Marks. One-man carry, isolated in the tackle, losing the ball. Colby isolated at the back by himself with 3 Italians on top of him. There were one of those moments where every time the Springboks went on the edge, you'd see 3 Italians waiting for him or waiting for them, and they would counter-ruck, knocking on the ball, on the floor. I mean, they really understood what the Boks were going to bring, and they actually just played towards that. And I mean, having a maul for 22 meters, what happened to the forward pack defense? Quinton Davids. What's his Quinton Davids? What's this guy's name? Elgo Davids was a Springbok assistant coach with the forwards. Vickers, you worked with him, man. What's this guy's name?
Even David.
Davids, yeah. I mean, 22 meters against the Springboks, unheard of. Jade, your thoughts as a forwards man. Talk to us with the weather.
You know what? I just think that this whole thing was also an attitude and a mindset situation from the Boks. You know, they got into a strong position and they got Italy into a strong hold. But I also thought, oh, here's a 60-70 coming up here. Especially against this Italian team, and especially the pass, you know, that you've seen from Italy. We have seen them fold away at times. And I just think the Boks went flat. They went flat, and even though they brought on the bomb squad, that second half, they just couldn't pick their game up. That's a concern for Rassie Erasmus. He'll have to address it with his players, He'd want them to be intense throughout the game. He want them to keep their body positions, to get post contact meters when taking contact, because their body positions weren't brilliant yesterday, guys. Come on, they were very flat carrying the ball. They weren't getting strong. That's not what we've come accustomed to. Yes, in certain aspects, they were good in the scrum, good at line-out time, but looking at Lothar Jager, even Etzebeth carrying the ball, I mean, that's not what they did against the Baa Baas last week. Last week, Lothar Jager was carrying the ball, hitting the line. His body position was absolutely brilliant. This week it was, he got caught flat, sometimes behind the advantage line. When was it you hear somebody speak and say the box got stopped behind the advantage line at times? I mean, I've been 2-3 years since I've heard that. And you have to give credit to Italy, but then you also got to look at the Box's drivers on the field. The senior players that was on the field at that time when they went flat. What did they do? What decisions was made there? We all spoke about, Dwayne from Ireland carrying over and taking on the message. But you also need that internal factor. You need Andre Pollard. You need guys like that to stand up and say, guys, come on, let's step it up a bit. We've gone very flat. Don't look at the scoreboard. Let's look at performances. Let's look at our next 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Let's do this for the next 5 minutes and change it. And let's get into the game better. Let's win the next 10 minutes. We lost now. We behind in the second half, if you're looking at the performance. But come, let's take it 5 minutes or 10 minutes at a time. And that's what they had to do, especially in a game like this where, you've gone flat. I think for me, Scoop, a lot of talk chit-chats about, Morne van der Berg has done well at scrum as well. A lot of chat to him, what's going to happen with him. Is he going to stay the starting 9 or what? But if you look at the try that he scored, it came from when they were going forward and, the back was going forward. In the second half, they didn't see that much. A guy like Andre Pollard, did he really have that impact on the game? How many times did you see this guy with ball in hand yesterday? And that was the 10 as well. He's the fly-off. So, those kind of things we got to look at with the Box. I don't think, it's a big concern. I think it's just something they're going to have to do in prep for the Rugby Championship, because they're playing Italy again next week and then they're playing Georgia. They got to try, and set them small milestones, mini milestones in the game, and achieve it. Russ has got to challenge them in that aspect, because I don't think Italy will beat them next week. I don't think Georgia will beat them. But they still got to get, those small milestones, those small targets on the field when they're on there. If they're leading by 30 points, what to do in the second half. Can we step it up, Challenges there to take that into the Rugby Championship. Because remember, they're playing New Zealand twice away this year. So they're doing the Eden Park test, which is the big one. So the one Rassie wants to win. And all this prep was for that test over there. So they really need to just look at it and set small milestones and mini milestones and go at that aspect. Other than that, I think as a performance in the review tomorrow, Rassie will be hard on them, but he'll also be like, guys, I know you're all better than this. Let's leave this behind us. I know you didn't do what was told and what was expected from you. So next week, come on, let's go on and let's give Italy a 50 or 60 next week. Whereas Italy will feel, what, let's try the same thing next week. Let's try and be in their face. Let's try and take them on next week. Let's try and disrupt them again next week. So it'll be interesting to see if the Box will learn from this. And if they do get flat in the game again next week, what will they do? What to spark that again? Because that's the big challenge in games like this, where the game is won, you get flat. How do you take that next step forward? So that's something they'll need to address,
All right, last one before we go. Hugh, we're going to let you off with the Welsh situation currently. But the last one, last one before we go, Vickers, have the Box sacrificed defense for attack? Since Ninaba has left, there's a lot of holes, right? I mean, Italy scoring 24 points. They could have scored another 14 on top of the 24. That takes them to 38 roughly. And how much of the Box current situation have they sacrificed defense for attack?
Yeah, Scoop, I think we spoke about it earlier, is that the problem that we have is that you've appointed an attack coach who has to come and obviously have an influence and impact into the team. You can't bring in an attack coach who's just going to obviously be part of this coaching staff and not do what he's here for. So, I mean, it's my speculation that they're probably spending a lot more time with the attack and relying on what the players know and what the players previous, obviously, coaching. And I think that for me, maybe with the new combinations and the new players within the squad, you can see that there are a little bit of misunderstandings somewhere. They're somewhere out there, but it's nothing that we can obviously say concrete, because obviously we don't know what is happening within the camp itself. So for me, I think they're probably spending a little bit more time on attack. It's just more speculation because of the fact that they've appointed a specialist attack coach to come and improve their attack. And I think, maybe someone who knows what is happening within the system would be able to share some light on that. But yeah, they are actually slacking off a little bit on that. And I think it's nothing major. It's just needs a little bit of understanding on different situations. And I think that was a difference with Jacques. He was very hard on detail within that defense system, and exactly what number you are on defense. What are your roles when you're in this number? And I think maybe that's where the misunderstanding comes in now, is that some of the players maybe don't understand in those roles because they don't work it as much as they used to because of the previous coach.
Yeah, and also there's new people now coming into the system as well who probably don't even know that mandate from a Jacques Nienaber, perhaps. Jade?
I also think that, there's a lot of focus on attack now because who they're playing. They're playing Barbarians, they're playing Italy twice, and then Georgia. So obviously there's been focus on the attack because, in all honesty, with respect to Italy and Georgia, they're not going to test you that much defensively as you are going to get with when you're playing New Zealand, Ireland, France, for example. So it could be that aspect as well with the early, aspects and early periods in this, that they got together in the first few camps, that they really focus more on attack than defense. But I don't think, they've really neglected the defense, if you just go back a few months ago, they kept the All Blacks scoreless. They've kept the Barbarians last week down to 2 tries, a star-studded Barbarians team as well. So you can't really say, hey, they're not focusing on defense. Since this new Rassie Erasmus era has come in with Tony Brown being there. I do think, it's just who they're playing now, and they just might have shown more aspects on attack, and more focus on that. And maybe as they lead into the championship, they'll start to sharpen up on their defense as well, because also look at who they're playing against.
Fair enough. You closing comments about this weekend overall, or anything that you want to share before we jump off?
I forgive you for not making me talk about Wales.
Manchester United. Vickers, closing comments.
Yeah, I'm still around. No, I think for me, closing thing would be, I would love to see, obviously, the starting lineup for the Boks again, in terms of what they're going to change. I suspect, in my opinion, obviously we all know Willie will start 15. I think he deserves it. He's making his 100. And then probably I would maybe speculation, Andre Esterhuizen probably start 12. David Dialende looked a little bit more tired on the weekend. I don't know if they'll make a change at 10, but I think maybe you need Mani to walk back in the game. Or even Sasha, actually, at 10.
Game drivers.
And then 9, I doubt Monet will be changed. But if it would be, I would love to see Williams on the bench. We saw him on the weekend celebrating on the sidelines, but maybe back in the squad. And then, unless obviously all these guys are looking to start them against Georgia in, I think Bombela, if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously in the forwards, I reckon Sia will be back at 6 if he's fit, and then Bongi might go to 2, and Mark's probably move to the bench for the bomb squad. Locks probably the same. So I think Chituka and Jasper won't change. And obviously the front row, I'm not sure if they might make a change at titles, but it's interesting. It's good times, man. You know what? It's always lovely to discuss rugby because we all speculate and then things change.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Or is it the more things jade, the more they stay the same? Final thoughts, Jade?
Nah, my final thought is just I think that the French team of yesterday would put 40 on the Italy team of yesterday. Goodbye.
What a mess. All right, guys, that's it on the Rugby Scoop this Sunday. It was heated. It was tables, ladders, and chairs. See you guys next week, Sunday. Have a lovely Sunday. Have a lovely week ahead. Thanks for listeners. Thank you guys for joining in. I see there's a French guy on on the listeners. He's been giving me a lot of flack this past week regarding the Justin Marshall comments. But I hope you heard, you learned, and you go back home and you tell them about the Rugby Scoop. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.